Hello students, welcome back to another lessons. I'm Reinthya, and in these lessons we're going to learn about noun clause and adjective clause, and also you will have a chance to test your knowledge. So let's begin. These are the 4 things that we're going to learn today. What is noun clause, the use of the noun clause, and then what is adjective clause and the use of the adjective clause. Let's start with the first one. What is noun clause? A noun clause is a dependent clause that works as a noun in a sentence. In other words, a noun clause is a part or fragment of a sentence which cannot stand on its own. Usually it starts with subordinating conjunctions such as what, whatever, when, whenever, why, how, that, and so on. Or we can use the relative pronouns such as who, whose, and whom. To make sure the part of the speech is function as a noun, is try to replace it with a pronoun. So let's take a look at the example. Where I live is a lovely place. Where I live here is known as a noun clause. Why? Well, we just try to replace it with a pronoun. It, okay? It is a lovely place. So when we change the noun clause, we can still understand the meaning of the sentence, right? So it's also function as a noun. Moving on to the next one. A noun clause takes place of any noun in a sentence, such as subject, object, subject complement, positive, adjective phrase complement, noun phrase complement, prepositional complement. These are the examples of the syntactic functions. Let's start with the first one, the subject. How you dance is impressive. The word how you dance defines subject of the sentence. Next one, object. I will do whatever you demand. Whatever you demand here defines object. The next one, subject complement. My action is whatever you decide. Whatever you decide here is known as the subject complement. Why? Because it describes the noun in the sentence, which is the words my action. The next one, object complement. He will announce the monitor whoever wins the competition. Whoever wins the competition is known as object complement because it describes the word the monitor. Okay, next one, a positive. The man who I met last year is hilarious. Who I met last year here describes the words the man. Next one, adjective phrase complement. It is weird that I like being alone. That I like being alone here is the adjective phrase complement because it explains the previous adjective here, which is the word weird. Next one, noun phrase complement. My belief that dream will be happened is possible. That dream will be happened here is known as a noun phrase complement. Last one, prepositional complement. The room is where I met my best friend. Sorry, it should be this. This room is where I met my best friend. So, where I met my best friend here is the preposition of where the place that you met your friend. Next one is the nominal categories of the noun clause. So there are 7 nominal of noun clause. The first one, declarative subordinative clause, usually is known as a normal sentence or just a simple sentence. This is the example that he laughs with me makes them jealous. Next one, interrogative subordinative clauses. I wonder whether he will come. The word whether he will come is known as interrogative subordinative clauses. The next one, exclamative subordinative clauses. The example is I'm surprised at how heinous she can be. How heinous she can be is known as exclamative subordinate clause. The next one, two infinitive clauses. My heart's desire is to know you more. To know you more here is known as two infinitive clause. The next one, in participle clauses. I enjoy dancing with you in the ballroom. Dancing with you in the ballroom here, known as in participle clause. The next one, pair infinitive clauses. The lawyer made the man forget his speech. Forget his speech here is the pair infinitive clause. Last one, passive participle clauses. I had my case closed last year. Closed last week here is the passive participle clauses. Now you understand the nominal categories of noun clause. Now let's move on to the next clause, adjective clause. What's adjective clause? Okay, adjective clause or a relative clauses is a dependent clause that modifies a noun or a pronoun. Let's take a look at this example here. The man who wears a tuxedo is my best friend. The word who wears a tuxedo is modifying the noun, which is the word the man. The function of the adjective clause is an adjective. It is used to explain a noun or pronoun, and usually it is placed next to the noun phrase or noun, or even just a pronoun. It begins with a relative adverb. Next, there are three types of an adjective clause: finite, non-finite, and verbless adjective clauses. Let's start with the finite adjective clause. There are two types of it. The first one, restrictive modifications. For example, the girl who wears the black gown wins the competition. The words who wears the black gown is known as the restrictive modification. Why? Because it explains the noun of the sentence. Which girl are you talking about? The next one, non-restrictive modifications. For example, Gary, who washes the car, is my cousin. The word who washes the car defines which person are you talking about. And the difference between these two types, these two modifications, is that for the restrictive modification, we don't use any comma. While the non-restrictive modification, we use comma. In other words, for the non-restrictive modifications, the clause usually used as an additional information only. In other words, even though we omit this clause, we still understand the meaning of the sentence. Next one, non-finite adjective clause. There are three types of it. The first one is adjectival imparticiple subordinate clause. It is an adjective clause that built around an ing participle clause corresponds to a relative whose pronouns is a subject. For example, the woman crying under the tree is my co-worker. As you can see here, the words crying under the tree is an adjective clause. Okay, in other words, it modifies the noun phrase. As we can see here, the words the woman. The clause crying under the tree can be interpreted as who is sitting. Next slide is adjectival passive participle subordinate clause. It corresponds to a relative clause whose relative pronoun is a subject. For example, the office designed by Celine was formally established on 7 January 2001. Designed by Celine here is known as adjective clause. Why? Because it's placed after the noun. As we can see here, the noun here is office, the office, the noun phrase. The clause designed by Celine can be interpreted as who is the designer. The third one is adjectival to infinitive clause. It corresponds to relative clause whose relative pronoun is a subject, an object, or a prepositional complement. For example, the first thing to do is to clean the kitchen. The words to do here is known as adjectival to infinitive clause because it corresponds to the relative clause. The last one is verb plus adjective clause. The relative pronoun and the verb in the subordinate clause that both modifies a noun phrase are ellipses. Example, I always remember the house full of memories. The word full of memories is an adjective clause that modifies the noun phrase of the house. Now, let's practice it together. Identify the kind of clause used in the following sentences. First one, I will never forget what you've done 4 years ago. Which one do you think is the clause? Great. What you've done 4 years ago. And now, what type of clause is it? Great. It's a noun clause. Okay, you can just try to substitute the pronoun it for the clause. Okay, let's try to read the sentence with I will never forget it. Right? Great. Next one. That was the moment when we were happy and confused. Which one do you think is the clause? Great. When we were happy and confused. And what type of clause is it? Yeah, it's adjective. Why? Because it modifies the noun of the sentence, which is the moment. Great. Number 3. The boss, who is very strict, gave us a lot of rules. Which one do you think is the clause? And what type of the clause is it? Great! Who is very strict, and it is adjective clause. Why? Because it is placed after the pronoun, which is the boss. Okay, who is very strict here modifies the noun, so it can be known or called as adjective clause. The last one. How the COVID-19 disease spread so fast shocks me. Which one is the clause and what type of clause is it? Yeah, very good. How the COVID-19 disease spread so fast is known as the noun clause. Yeah, why? Because you can just try to substitute the words into the pronoun of it. So we can just be like, it shocks me, right? So it can be still understandable and sensible. You are doing a very great job. Now I'm going to give you a summary of the video. As you guys can see, these are the 2 examples of the clauses. The first one is the noun clause. What my sister brought startled me. And then the adjective clause. The house where they live is very minimalist. You can just try to modify the noun clause as pronouns for like it startled me. Yeah. And then for the adjective clause, the house where they live is minimalist. As we know, adjective clause usually placed after noun, which is the house here. Okay. And then the adjective clauses consist of 3 types, which are finite, non-finite, and verbless. For the finite itself, it can stand on its own. And then non-finite cannot stand on its own, while the verb plus usually is no verb element at all. For the finite, the statement won't have the same meaning if the adjective clause were not contained, or we can just use with comma, okay? While the non-finite, if we omit the clauses, the sentence is still understandable, and usually there is no comma at all. For the verbless, the relative pronoun and the verbless in the subordinative clause that post modifiers a noun phrase are elliptic. Thank you guys for your attention and time. I hope you guys understand for these lessons, and stay healthy and happy. I'll see you guys in the next meeting. Bye!